On December 16, 1998, the United States, with Great Britain, began a blistering bombing campaign to strike a blow against Saddam Hussein's attempts to produce and stockpile weapons of mass destruction. The president did not go to Congress for authorization or approval. That president was William Jefferson Clinton. So how did he feel about President Obama's decision to go to Congress on Syria to seek its approval? I asked him. Mr. President, did the president need to go to Congress for authorization for what sounded like 2 or 3 days of cruise missile strikes? You didn't go to Congress to do Desert Fox, which was 4 days of strikes against Iraq. The president didn't do it when he launched a 7-month campaign against Libya. So was it a diminution of presidential power?
No, I think that he was not required to go because Syria was clearly in violation of international law. Even though they didn't sign on to the Chemical Weapons Convention, there was an international pact against chemical weapons going back nearly 100 years as a reaction to what happened in World War I. So I don't think he had to go. But I think he believed that first there were partisan divisions in the Democratic Party and in the Republican Party. That is, he had strong support within the Republicans for doing something. Senator McCain, Senator Graham, some of the Iraq War veterans in the Republican House caucus. And he knew he'd have some opposition in the Democratic Party. I think after he saw the debate in the UK, even though you might say, well, that ought to frighten anybody off, you know, but he had a parliamentary majority, Mr. Cameron didn't, couldn't deliver it. I think it made him think, you know, this is something the country ought to do together. We can't pretend that this is not important. And I think he thought it would give him an opportunity to convince people that we weren't going to send soldiers and we weren't going to fly airplanes into the air defense systems. That is, they wanted to take action with rockets and missiles. But there are always bad consequences, so I think he did. Now, whether that was right or wrong, there is no question that it had one positive impact. The Russians and the Syrians knew that he wanted to bomb, and they knew that he might bomb even if he lost in Congress.
But this issue might come up again, because if this agreement falls apart, and if the president asked the Congress to come back and give him some kind of approval, if not authorization, you may still have a situation where the Senate votes yes and the House votes no. Do you think the president could use force in those circumstances?
I do. First, I think the Senate is generally viewed as the more important body on these things, and the Senate has to ratify treaties, for example, under our Constitution. And secondly, he does have some international law to fall back on because of the chemical weapons issue. But let's cross that bridge when we come to it. Right now, we have a situation in which Mr. Putin and President Assad, they may think that they've dodged a bullet, but they've also stepped into the arena of accountability with people who are not naive. And that's, I think, what we want for everybody. We shouldn't want to escape accountability, and they shouldn't. Getting them into the arena of accountability and raising the prospects, we won't have to look at pictures of those kids and what they went through with those chemical weapons, murdering them. That's worth doing.
President Clinton, do you believe, when reviewing this whole business of Edward Snowden and the revelations, do you think we've crossed a line in terms of government intrusions on privacy for security? Do you think we need to have a kind of a national conversation or some kind of a real comprehensive overview and say to ourselves, you know, we may have gone too far, we've got to rein this back in, or are we broadly speaking in the right place?
Well, both things could be true. That is, I think I was talking to a friend of mine who is in this tech business who said, I am I'm a civil libertarian who's not a Luddite. That is, he said, I believe we have to try to protect ourselves and we have to use big data to do it. The stated policy, which is that we were going to look for patterns in telephone calls, patterns in emails, patterns in communications, but that in the absence of some evidence to tie you or me or anybody else to terrorist groups, the underlying messages would not be penetrated. We now know that's not exactly the case. And it's interesting, we know that this Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court has done a better job than we thought. That is, that they've tried to be vigilant about this, and that the NSA or other agencies apparently inadvertently went beyond what the court had authorized them to do. It's a good thing that we know this, and I would encourage more disclosure on the procedures, not the details, but the procedures. I think it would be a good thing for the American people to have a debate on this. I suppose we have to wait for a little of the smoke to clear over Syria and some of these other things that are being debated now. But we have to use big data. We have to protect privacy. I think it would be a good thing if there was just a little more transparency about the decisions of this court, and because they clearly have tried to do a good job, and they were clearly disturbed when they found out that even though it may have been unintentional, the government went beyond on a couple of occasions what they had authorized them to do.